Welcome to the worst nightmare of all. Reality.
Explore the lesser-known stories of our unknown world. Join the pursuit of the paranormal with Ash and Greg.
UFO Thinker Podcast.
Hello, my name's Frank, and I'm the host of the UFO Thinker podcast. I'd always been mildly interested in UFOs, but like many people, the events of 2017 ignited a fire of curiosity for the UFO topic, which has been raging ever since. I wanted to start a podcast, but initially thought, well, I'm not an astrophysicist, I'm not a fighter pilot, and I've never even seen a UFO. I'm just a normal guy who's interested in this mystery. But that's when a light bulb went off. There are so many other people just like me who are fascinated with this stuff, so why not start a podcast to talk about it from the ordinary guy's perspective? All the BS stripped away, as a few people have said, and let's see if we can get to the truth in all of this. Thanks to everyone who's been on board with the journey so far. It's been amazing to see so many listeners tuning in, and if you're new here, welcome. You can now support the podcast on Patreon with tiers starting from £3 per month. The podcast will always be 100% free, but supporting the show in this way allows me to devote more time and make the show bigger and better. Higher tiers also include special benefits such as being able to suggest episode topics and get merchandise, and I really truly appreciate every listener whether you support on Patreon or not. So now, with all of that said, let's get into today's episode. Okay, so it's my pleasure to welcome to the show today Ash and Greg from the Pursuit of the Paranormal podcast. How are you doing, guys?
I'm good. Good evening, Greg.
Good evening to you as well, Ash. How are you doing, Frank?
I'm very well, thanks. Yeah, just it's a bit later than I usually record this, so I might be a little bit sleepy today, but I'm sure we'll be all right.
This is a bit earlier for us. This
is it?
Quite early, yeah.
You generally record pretty late then, you guys?
Yeah, you about 10:30 onwards at night.
Is it? Wow. Yeah, I'm usually a bit of an early bird. I usually get the recordings in quite early in the day with a coffee, so if I start nodding off, somebody just make a loud noise and I'll wake up. So I know you two as the hosts of the Pursuit of the Paranormal podcast, on which I joined you both for a chat recently before Christmas.
Yeah.
And Ash, you're also the UFO Identified founder, and I attended the excellent mini-con that you put on last year, as did quite a few of my listeners. But before we get into any other bits and bobs, could you guys both just give the listeners a little bit of background on yourselves and what got you into your respective topics? And you guys can choose who you want to go first.
I go first. You sort of just mentioned a little bit then. So
go for it, yeah, man.
So I had a sighting when I was 11, a UFO sighting, and that basically kick-started off a lifelong interest in wanting to know what I saw. I saw something unusual. Didn't really not have any interest before then. Saw this sighting, and then sort of thinking, what was that? Where did that come from? What could it have been? And then started looking, going to the library, getting tapes out of alien UFO documentaries, reading all the magazines at the time. UFO magazine was quite big at the time. Started watching X-Files. I'm probably a bit young at the time. Some episodes were quite scary, but I was watching them anyway. And yes, that's led to a lifetime of interest in UFOs and trying to find out what I saw. And then probably the last 4 or 5 years, had more interest in other sides of the paranormal, like ghosts and cryptids. So it sort of was all blended into one. And that led to starting the podcast.
Brilliant. And how about yourself, Greg?
Started quite young. Used to watch a program called Arthur C. Clarke's World of Strange Mysteries, which is probably off air by the time you guys were born. But in that, he used to talk about all the paranormal sorts of stuff, poltergeists, everything that used to freak me out. But that sparked my interest, and there was a particular case that he covered, which was the Enfield poltergeist. from there, I got into UFOs through the X-Files, then sort of waned a little bit. Then over the last sort of 5-10 years or so, been back interested in that kind of thing again. Joined many paranormal groups. Currently belong to a local paranormal group that I helped set up a couple of years ago, just before lockdown. And then during lockdown, me and Ash started talking and got the podcast up and running. So yeah,
Awesome.
So like Ash is more UFO, I'm more more paranormal, and it's worked really well.
Yeah, while you were saying that, I just pulled this down off my shelf. I don't know if you can see that there, but this is actually, I can't remember if I mentioned this when I was on you guys' show, but that was pretty much the book that Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World book that went along with one of his various like shows that he did. And that was pretty much the book that really got things going for me. And it's weird, I mentioned it on a few other shows as well, and loads of people have messaged me, particularly from the UK, saying that they had the same experience, that book or the TV series really kicked off a lot of things for them. So
I think back then, that was because there was no internet, and you have to go to libraries to get all your like reference books back in the day. That was the one program I remember sticking out that ever covered like subjects like UFOs, poltergeists, crystal skulls, stigmata. That was another one that freaked me out, and it still is very odd subject that people have in the bleeding from the proposed places where Christ was up on the cross, like proper weird stuff that was never really covered even in mainstream TV. It was like a half-hour show if I remember rightly, and it was just he was an incredible guy. And I think he helped develop the first communication satellite. So he was a very switched on guy. He wasn't just this crackpot doing TV programs. Yeah.
Well, it's funny that I never actually saw the TV programs at all. I think I got the book like from a car boot sale or something, when you have like a jumbo sale at school or something like that. And it was actually when I was at primary school. So that must have been probably, I'm not sure when the TV show was on, but I would imagine it's probably after the show had already finished. And I was reading this book, got really obsessed with it, and got into trouble at school for like reading out all the parts of it to the other kids and giving them nightmares. So, anyway, I just thought that was worth just delving into for a minute. Definitely. But Ash, I've got to ask you then about your particular UFO sighting that you had. Are you comfortable talking about it, or?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so it was 1997, which I know because it was when the Halley's Comet was visible.
Oh yeah,
and it was visible throughout the UK for about 3 or 4 months. So on clear nights, we'd just go outside in the street and have a look at the comet. And this one particular night, there's probably 4 or 5 kids and a couple of adults. I was out in the street watching this comet. Obviously just in the sky stationary, but it's just obviously it's pretty cool to see. And all of a sudden, someone pointed out, like, what's that over there? And it's like a typical triangle shape, light in each corner, just moving, pretty big, just moving across the sky. Sort of from where the comet was, just moving. And just pretty fast, cleared the whole sky in about 45 seconds. And you could see, like, it was obviously quite far away, but you could see where, like, sort of the outline was, where the sky went darker, in between the 3 points of light. So we watched it just traverse across the sky and then disappeared. And the adults, like, no idea what that was. Wasn't a plane. It's just a typical triangle sighting. And that's, like I say, that's kick-started off my whole interest. Never seen anything since. That's me, one and only UFO sighting, sadly. Been looking ever since. But yeah, that was that, and that was 1997.
Wow. So was it kind of moving directly across the sky in a straight line, or did it do any maneuvers?
Pretty much. It's just straight line, just pretty much nearly, probably about just less than 90 degrees angle from us, so nearly straight up, and just straight across the sky. Just pretty fast, like I say, cleared the whole sky in about 45 seconds, and that was it. It was gone.
Wow. Yeah, pretty cool. The triangles have always been a particular area of fascination for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's an interesting one.
They've always been there, like the triangle. Always been like a popular reported shape of UFOs.
Yeah. Yeah, so One thing I found interesting myself as I've dug further into the UFO topic is you inevitably encounter strange goings on and things like that, which have some crossover into that world of the paranormal. So you guys' podcast basically kind of combines the two. So obviously with yourself, Ash, coming from the UFO side and Greg from the paranormal side, how have you both kind of found the crossover there? Must have led to some, interesting discussions over time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, our very first episode we did was about Yowie, which is Australia's version of Bigfoot, basically. And that was our very first episode back in December 2020. Trying to get years mixed on. Yeah, it's December 2020. And so in researching that, I found that over 20% of Yowie sightings over the years also combined with a UFO or lights in the sky event. So that's a huge number of Bigfoot sightings or Yowie sightings that have also had a UFO connection to them. So when I looked into American Bigfoot sightings, the connection is there as well. So even going back to our very first episode, we found this link between UFOs and other aspects of paranormal. And it's sort of a theme that's sort of always been present across like every episode pretty much. There's some sort of connection that we found with the guests or with events happening. There's a lot of combining, and that sort of led to think sort of various theories between what it is, what it could be, where they're coming from. So yeah, it's just been, like I say, don't even want to add to that, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, like Ash said, some of the topics we covered, the guests have had experiences across both. We've spoken to people who have all of them happen at the same time. So we spoke to John Edmonds of the Stardust Ranch, and very much like Skinwalker Ranch, he has UFOs, aliens, men in black, unmarked police cars, like weird police officers turning up, poltergeist activity in his house, portals in his house, abduction cases on his property as well. So he's quite the sort of the one end of the extreme of everything. And then we have other guests and other topics, like Ash said, where there appears to be some kind of link between all sorts of paranormal stuff. And it's been fascinating, really, because I had an interest in UFOs before. And then during this, I've learned so much more about the subject and how they all seem to be linked. People have, like, they walk in and there's like a time slip. They've seen UFOs. They have this weird experience. They go into a shop and it's gone back in time. They come out of the shop, they're back to normal. All sorts of weird stuff. And they all seem to have some kind of weird connection. And it's, very peculiar. And like I said, it is something that seems to happen across most of the episodes, if not all of the episodes that we cover, where one aspect of the paranormal has also got at least one other aspect as well. So, yeah, it's been very enlightening on our journey.
Yeah, have you found much of in the paranormal side of things? Is there much of a sort of hitchhiker effect? Like they talk about with UFO sightings, especially at Skinwalker Ranch and things like that, where somebody can and have some kind of encounter, and then they essentially like take that home with them, sort of thing, and then having it had one experience, it kind of leads on to other experiences, or even for experiences people around them. Do you get much of that in the just purely paranormal side of things?
So some of the cases that I've been involved with the paranormal group, there have been instances where members of the family of a house that we've been working with have actually also had experiences away from the house. They'll go on a public investigation somewhere and feel like they've brought something back with them. So it does happen quite a lot where people are quite worried that they're going to go somewhere haunted and it's going to come back with them. And it does sometimes. And I don't know why that is. I think people are quite susceptible and quite, I don't know what the word is really, but they have a propensity to sort of like have attachments or be more spiritually aware, and that leads them to have more experiences than they probably would have had they not gone to a haunted place or whatnot.
And I think as well, like the events seem to get more frequent or more things happening. So it start off small, like might just be they hear weird noises. A couple months later, they start seeing things or objects are moving. And that can lead up to being hurt or actually injured by whatever entity is attached to them or is in that property. And it seems to be that when you experience something, I think it can open your mind up. So what you might have think, oh yeah, no chance any of this is real. But then once one thing happens to you, you can then start to think, oh, if that's happened, then all these other things could be true as well. This could be happening, this could be real. I think once you open your mind and sort of let them in, like the thoughts in, you can be more susceptible to more things happening. Whether it's like the phenomena, however it is, sort of knows that, or whether you're just sort of being more aware that you're recognising it, rather than just brushing things off as, oh, it's nothing, when it actually is something.
We've spoken to some people that claim to be abducted by entities on a regular basis, and early on in their life, they experience poltergeist activity in their house. And that also seems to be something where some people have had experience of in the middle of their life and currently, and it's all when we talk to them and you go back and say, okay, when was the first time this happened? I go, well, actually, I remember it when I was a bit younger. And go, has there been any sort of like poltergeist activity or any other like weird activity? And I go, actually, yeah, me and my brother used to talk about a ghost in our house, or this guy used to have poltergeist activity when he was younger in his parents' house. And it's interesting that there does seem to be a link early in life with poltergeist activity and UFO related activity as they get older.
Have you guys heard much about the work of Dr. Gary Nolan? He's done these various studies on certain areas of the brain of people who are more likely to have encounters with UAP. I think it's the I'm not a brain scientist, whatever the proper word is for that, but I think it's the basal ganglia as a particular part of the brain that apparently is like more developed in people who have got people who are quite intuitive and have highly skilled people like pilots and people who are really good at chess, and apparently those people are actually more likely. Have you ever come across anything like that with the paranormal side of things? People who has there been any studies done on people's brains?
Not that I'm aware of. It's not sort of an area that I've really looked into, to be honest with you. I know there are lots of studies, but it's always seen a bit like UFOs and UAPs. It's almost a bit like a fringe kind of science that people are aware of it, but they don't necessarily. I don't think. Well, there may be studies on it. It's not something that I've seen, but.
Neuroscientist, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah,
that sounds a bit better than brain.
Yeah, it's a bit more official sounding, that, isn't it? But do you think we sort of get, with skinwalkers at the Pentagon and all of these more kind of, the sort of weirder aspects of the UFO mystery, the weirder aspects kind of coming to the forefront a bit more recently, at least, from where I'm stood, it seems that that's the case. Do you think we sort of get into a stage where the paranormal side of things and the UFO side of things are almost becoming inextricable?
I think so. I think like in the past, like you say, you'd have those that sort of believe in ghosts and those that believe in UFOs, or like as separate camps. And I think now, like I say, it is more coming together. Like I think we talk about it more as the woo side of like ufology and sort of the study of it. And I think a popular theory that's been talked about a lot is obviously dimensional properties or beings, and that's how all different things are linked, or like portals, where all these different types like ghosts, cryptids, UFOs are from a different dimension. They can make themselves visible to us And I think that's where the combine, and I think that's where more people are now open to sort of accepting that that is an explanation for all of the different paranormal things, rather than just being UFOs, just being ghosts. So I think, yeah, you are right in saying that there is a lot more togetherness now, I think, with the different aspects.
Anything to add on that, Greg?
Yeah, I think there's definitely still the two camps, and if you go on social media, they're completely sort of separate. You've got the UFO groups and you've got the paranormal groups. But like Ash said, I think more and more, and it's definitely something that we talk about a lot, that there is a definite coming together, and all these things are linked, I think. And we do pose that question to our guests as well when they come on about, do you think it's all like under one umbrella now? And I think as time goes on, I think people will see it more like that. Too many things happen, I think. Like we said, with the UFO sightings and ghosts and cryptids all happening around the same areas and at the same time period, that people will see it just all as one. I think it is, whether it's just called paranormal. I think that's the difficult bit, is you saying, we could say, yeah, they're all linked, but what do you call it? Because when you say paranormal, you just think ghosts. You say UAPs, well, that's just objects in the sky or whatever. So I don't think there'll ever be a common term for it, because I don't think people like that umbrella name of what it might be, because it sort of dilutes what their avenue of interest is. It's always like, okay, I'm into ghosts, so that's my route. That's the paranormal. I'm into UFOs. Okay, that's UFOs. And then you've got Bigfoot people in the middle. But there's never a term that's going to link them all, I don't think. I may be wrong, but that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, the paranormal it's another one of those phrases with a very strong stigma attached, isn't it? It's a bit like, UFOs was until fairly recently. That's starting to change a little bit, but yeah, it's interesting to think about how all of the more strange elements of the UFO, the wider kind of UFO mystery, how they link together. But Greg, I recall you mentioned when I was on your show, I think I've wanted to ask you about this ever since, so now's the time, sort of thing. You mentioned about doing actual like paranormal field investigations.
Yes.
If I remember correctly. So yeah, how does that work in general? Like, what sort of things do you do? And are there any particular ones that really stand out as something crazy happening?
Well, yeah. So the most recent one that we've done is a location called the Ancient Ramen. It's not used as an inn anymore. It was a hotel, bar, that kind of public house type thing. About an hour from me, it's in Gloucestershire, in England, and it's supposedly one of the most haunted locations in the UK. It comes up regularly in haunted locations around the world. So me and the group that I belong to, we went and spent a night there investigating. And so part of it is that I've got my equipment that I take. So we've got voice recorders, infrared cameras, normal cameras, got my laptop. We've got mediums that come with us, skeptics, technical people. So there's a small group of us that will go in and we'll have a wander around the place just to get a feel of it. And we got to the entrance and somebody said to me, have you just seen that thing move in the window upstairs? And we hadn't even gone in the property at this point. And right away I was just like, what the hell's going on here? I don't know if I can swear on this podcast.
Yeah, you're all good. Okay. I've dropped the occasional F-bomb over the months.
So it's just like, oh shit. So we go in there, we offload all the camera equipment and whatnot. So let's go and have a wander around, just get the feel of the place, see what's going on. Because I've been into properties before and I walk in there and it's just like, it just feels like a normal house. It doesn't I don't get any sense of anything. Walked into this place and instantly it just felt a bit weird. So as part of our investigations, we'll go round, we'll have a listen to the property, see if there's any creaking noises, because some old places, they just do creak and move in the wind and whatnot. Try and take a sense of where the roads are, what the traffic's like, because obviously that has a bit of a bearing on lights that may be seen and sounds that may be heard. And we'd been in there for about 5 minutes, and we're walking around, me and one of the guys, and we were standing in this barn area, and he's like, heard this, both of us heard this noise, and he was like, did you just hear that? And I was like, well, yeah, I'm looking at you, because I thought I heard something. Turned round, kind of freaked out at this point, because we'd like heard this knocking noise, walked back through to a different area of the building, and he's like, did you hear that? I'm like, what? He goes, come over here. We went to this like doorway, and he goes, I swear I heard a growling noise. And there was literally 6 of us in the property, only 2 of us in this main part of the building, and the other 4 were in the kitchen. And from that moment on, I was just freaking out the whole time. I've been doing these investigations for years, not that scared of, I didn't think I was that scared of anything. And that whole night was freaking out. I wouldn't even be on my own in the property, on my like walking around. I was like, somebody's got to come with me. We heard noises. We done the Estes method, which I don't know if you're aware of. So you get the spirit. But me and Ash have done it on the podcast, and it's something we're going to look to do in the future because we've had some interesting results of it. And you get a spirit box, which for people who don't know, it's like a scanning radio. You put your headphones into it so only you can hear it, and you blindfold yourself so you can only hear stuff that's coming through the headphones. You can't see anything, you can't be influenced by outside senses, and it takes you a few minutes to sort of get into it, and you kind of zone into what's going on. Ash will testify to this because we done it while standing in the middle of Castle Ring at Cannock Chase, whilst in the pitch black. It was quite freaky. And what it does is you'll scan through the radio frequencies, and the person who's listening just shouts out any words, any sentences that come through on the spirit box. And it's supposedly that during the white noise and the way the spirits can manipulate things, that if there's bits of radio come through, that there'll be intelligent responses to questions that people external to you are asking. So we're outside talking to Ash, and Ash will ask questions that Ash can't hear, and he'll just fire out any answers or any responses he gets. So that's one of the methods we used at the Ancient Ramen, and I had a conversation, and I got told to fuck off by a spirit whilst we got it on video. This guy that was doing it, and I was saying, you don't like men, do you? And he's like, no, fuck off. So it can be quite weird, and it's a weirder method, as Ash will attest to, because we've done it in Castle Ring, and Ash is just firing out responses that he's getting in his spirit box, but doesn't actually know what he's saying. And there was 3 of us there on the Castle Ring, and the girl, the lady that was with us, who's part of Ash's team, said, do you know the name of anybody else in this group? And Ash almost straight away said, Abby. And that was the lady's name that was with us. It was completely weird. We got it on video. It's just like, what?
Yeah. So do the videos, do you put them on a YouTube channel or anything? Or
so for the paranormal group, no, not really. It's something that we'll keep the evidence. We go through it, and because we're all so busy and we've got lots of stuff going on, that it takes time to get through. We were there from like 7 o'clock in the evening till 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's like 8 hours worth of footage to go through, and it's quite a lot. So what we're doing on the investigations is, if we do it in sections, and we'll get the voice recorders, We'll listen to see if there's been any EVPs recorded. And what we do is, whilst we're having a coffee, every couple of hours, we'll plug it into the laptop, download it, and just have a listen live, almost live, and just see if we can hear anything there and then. And then if we do, we can ask further questions. Later on, I'll go back to the same place if there was an interesting piece of information. And that's all we do, is trying to gather evidence. It's not about trying to prove anything necessarily. It's just about, okay, we're there that night. What evidence can we gather, if anything, to prove either way that this particular place has or has not got any kind of spirit?
Sounds proper scary, man. I would have ran a mile, I think, if I got that kind of response. You wouldn't have seen me for dust.
But the thing is, I've been to places on paranormal hunts or investigations. They're called hunts online, but paranormal investigations where we just try and gather. Got experiments that we try. We record us doing them, and then if we get the evidence, cool. So we have got some bits that we've put up on YouTube that we're sort of convinced that what we've got on video is paranormal. For example, we've had children's footsteps in response to somebody talking about a tea party. So that's quite a weird piece of footage, and you can hear these footsteps running on old like stone flooring. But we tend to keep a lot of the evidence to ourselves because, as a group, especially if we're going into people's houses to help them, it's not about the pub. It's not like putting it up there for Ghost Adventures or Most Haunted. It's kind of like we respect the people's privacies. We got conversations that I've had for like an hour with this particular couple talking about the experiences that them and their family have had. And it's an interesting listen. And if you put it out there, it would be a really interesting like podcast episode, to be fair. But respecting their privacy and all that kind of stuff, we just put it together as like a what do you call I'm trying to think of the word, but just like a
record of what
you
did,
a record of the documenting the journey we go on with those people. So it's all about just putting it in one place and saying, actually, we can see where the problems come. So it's a challenge at times because there's so much evidence to go through sometimes, and you'll be watching video clips for like hours just thinking there's nothing even happening, but you have to go through the motions just to make sure that you haven't missed something. So
yeah, absolutely, man. It sounds really interesting. And obviously, anybody who's interested in that side of it can check out you guys' podcast, and I'm sure you'll be updating various findings that you come up against. So, have you guys ever actually seen a UFO that sort of coincided with one of your paranormal investigations?
No, unfortunately not. When me and Ash went to Cannock Chase, that was our aim. We were going to try and see a cryptid, we were going to try and see a UFO and potentially ghosts at the same time. We were in the hot spot. Unfortunately not. It was pissing it down with rain.
Yeah, that's often the issue that we have in this country, isn't it? The rain tends to get in the way of a lot of things. But Ash, let's talk about your little kind of field investigations that you do as well, like your Skywatch events and that kind of thing. So have you had much results from those? Like how do they work? If you can go into that a little bit, please.
Yeah, so we started hosting Skywatches basically since lockdown sort of got relaxed last year, so people could meet together outdoors and stuff. And so we just put it into our group, you have a Skywatch in this place on this date. And people are free to come. We've had up to like 14, 15 people come along to some of our Skywatches. Really friendly, social, relaxed. And people bring the binoculars, cameras, laser pointers, bring what they want. And obviously warm clothes and hot drinks because it gets pretty cold on tops of mountains at middle of the night. And we just basically sit down, watch the skies. Someone sees something that may be unusual or just a light, point it out, and other people can then sort of look on the app, see if there's any planes in the area, have a look through the equipment. And then obviously some people have some really good equipment. Some of the people that come along have got military grade scopes and recording equipment, and infrared binoculars, which are just like worth thousands of pounds and it's absolutely fantastic equipment. You can just see through the clouds, and like it's like no, it'd be a cloudy night. Look through these binoculars, and there's just no clouds there. You can just see all the stars, all the satellites, everything's going past. Turns up results. Different opinions. There's people that, like on the same night, two people can see the same thing. One person believes it to just be a satellite or a plane. The other person believes it to be a genuine anomalous incident. We had nothing concrete. To be fair, for me, it's more about the just being out there, just being with like-minded people, which can be quite hard to find. People that share this interest. It's hard. Like online is okay, but you get a lot of arguing and not nice comments online. So to be able to be meeting up these past like 8 or 9 months with other people, meeting new people, just sitting in the field, watching the sky, having a chat about UFOs. It's just that's what it's about. It's about building the community, and people can have a space and a place where they know they can go and talk about it and not be judged. And I think that's what sort of the aim of the whole UFO identified thing was, to bring people together where you can just share your interest in it.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic, man, and I'm definitely going to be trying to come along to the next one that you do as soon as sometimes can't make it with various other bits and bobs going on, but really going to try and get along to the next one that you guys put together, and I'll probably talk about it on the podcast and tweet it and stuff, so anybody who is in the area, it'd be amazing to get a few extra people down there and see what we can see, eh?
Definitely.
Yeah, so have you ever tried much like CE5 side of things with your sky watches, or is it more just kind of observing what's there? Or have you ever actually tried to get into that side of it?
No, I've not. I've intended to. I know a couple of people around the Northwest where we're based that run CE5 groups and CE5 meetings. I've been wanting to get along to one and just experience it, because I was a little bit sceptical of that side of the field. Obviously very open-minded, just want to try it for myself, go along with people that know what they're doing and just experience it. And I've like spoken with the people that run the group and they're happy for me to document it, like pictures or videos if I wanted to, just to sort of, like I say, just try it out. But I am so hopeful in the next couple of months I will get out to a CE5 meeting and just experience it, because I am, like I say, a bit sceptical at the minute.
Yeah, I think a healthy dose of skepticism definitely necessary with those types of things. But like you say, I'm sort of on the same wavelength with it. It's fascinating, and I've seen certain things online that definitely point towards something going on. But unless you actually see it with your own eyes and you turn up and try it, it's difficult to say anything with any certainty. A couple of people put me in touch with some CE5 groups actually in the UK, and I was going to try to go along to some of their meetups, but they're all quite far down south. So if there is anybody listening to this who's interested in CE5 and wants to do a bit of sky watching next time there's one on, more than welcome to come and join us. So yeah, one thing that one of my listeners actually asked me to ask both of you, I guess, but I'm not sure who would know the most about this, but Dave Smethurst wanted me to ask, do you guys know of any cryptid sightings in the UK, in the north of the UK in particular, and any sort of networks of researchers who actually specialise in that side of things?
So, to answer Dave's question, hey Dave, I know Dave off Twitter and UFO stuff. So I've not done that much research into sort of the north, but the UK as a whole, there is a lot of sightings. And I think with the Northwest is pretty populated, pretty heavily built in big cities, near to other big cities. There's not that much sort of open land. However, I belong to a group called the Bigfoot Research Team UK. I'm actually the team leader for the Northwest. However, because of COVID, again, we've not been able to sort of get out there. But we have, so our team's UK based, we have teams for different regions of the UK. And we receive reports to our website, and then whoever's for that area can then go and investigate that report. Like I say, we've not been able to do too much because of COVID, but we are actually going out in a couple of weeks to do a bit of a feet on the ground investigation somewhere in the Northwest. Not decided where we're going to go yet. So that's what I'm doing at the minute, actually, is trying to see where there has been sightings in the north, and then we're going to go there for overnight to see if we can find anything. But to answer the question, they haven't found anything specifically.
Any thoughts on that there, Greg?
It's a fairly new one to me because until we started doing the podcast, I hadn't even really thought about any kind of cryptid activity in the UK. We talked about some wild man and that kind of phenomena, and hence we went to Cannock Chase, trying to look for or see if we would see anything like that. But it's definitely not an area I'm fully knowledgeable about, only from like the normal American Bigfoot sort of stuff. It is fascinating, and we do speak to people who I can't see how the UK can have any kind of Bigfoot because we're too small. People would see it a lot. But then when we start talking about portals and UFO related activity, seen where there's sort of Bigfoot, it kind of opens up the possibility that there could be. The reason we're not seeing that stuff is they're interdimensional, or they go through some kind of portal. So as crazy as the conversation is, and me and Ash talk about this a lot. If we'd have had this conversation before we started the podcast, that in 2022 we'd be talking about Bigfoot in the UK, UFOs, poltergeists, and everything else we cover off, I would have thought I was mental. But I'm definitely open to the possibility. We speak to people. There's a guy called Ben from 401 Files, and he actively goes out and spends nights in locations where there's been sightings, or there's some kind of story of a wild man or Bigfoot, whatever you want to call it. And he's passionate about it. So, and when you speak to people like that, you go, actually, if you're that into it, something's got to be there. And some of the stories he's got to tell, quite freaky. So, yeah, I'm open. In answer to your question, I'm open to the idea, but I don't know if it is a thing in the UK.
I have actually got a cryptid sighting myself. I actually just completely forgot about this. So when we talk about cryptids, obviously that includes big cats. And I was driving home. I used to work in a casino as the pub room supervisor in a casino in Manchester. And I used to live in Warrington. So I used to drive home at 4 or 5 in the morning. So I think it was a Sunday morning, about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And it's just obviously empty road. It's like a main A road going into Warrington from the M62. And there's a roundabout, and I saw ahead of the roundabout, just past it was it's a big cat. It was a large, like a medium-sized dog, but it was a cat. So it's the size of a big dog, but it was a cat, and it's clearly walked like a cat. It was like the agile of a cat. So I drive towards it, it's like, what the hell? And it just went off into the bush at the side of the road. I pulled over, because I was like, what have I just saw? And then I started getting a bit creeped out, like, it's 4 in the morning, it's pitch black, there's no other cars about at all, I'm just going to get out of here. So I drove home, didn't really think about it. I texted my partner and said, like, just remember this date and time, because I saw something on this road at this date and time. In the future, I've got that like date and time if I needed it. And I sort of just forgot about it. Wishing I had a dash cam. So I've been thinking about getting a dash cam for ages and never got one. It's like, why didn't I have a dash cam? It would have definitely caught it. And then a couple months later, I hadn't even thought about it. Talking to my brother's a bit into sort of conspiracies and stuff, and he mentioned something about cryptids and just reminded me about it. It's like, I saw what looked like a large cat, like a big dog-sized cat. And I put in, like just on Google, and I put in big cat sightings, Warrington. And all the results were where I saw it, going back about 4, 5, 6 years. There'd been quite a few reports in that same like area where I'd seen it. So I was just like, wow, like, is there something right near where I live?
Yeah.
But whereas you wouldn't think it's just like a bit of a built-up area. There's some countryside in that side of Warrington, but it's just like, I was just shocked when I just Googled it, Warrington, and then where I saw it was all the results of different people reporting seeing this large cat. So there's one to have a look for.
Yeah, I think while we were talking about this, I think the only one I really recall in the UK, apart from I suppose the Loch Ness Monster, could probably class as a cryptid. But there was when I was younger, there was the Beast of Bodmin. Is that a thing, or have I just imagined that as
That's a thing.
That's the thing.
It was like a
Cornwall, isn't it?
yeah, some kind of like wild cat that was seen roaming through the fields or whatever. But I don't really know. I sort of always just put it down to, it may have just been, somebody had an exotic pet and the exotic pet may have escaped at some point, and sort of just shelved it in the back of my mind. And like you were saying, Greg, if somebody had said to me a year ago that I would have even been considering these kinds of things, I would have been like, no, there's no way. But then, you hear about these skinwalkers at the Pentagon, there is that weirdness is inevitable. If you're looking at the UFO topic, you're going to come across some of that sort of stuff. Shadow people. There was a case recently of a guy who was working in a nuclear facility, and they saw orbs floating above the place, and then a shadow person and things like that. And those kind of things are just unavoidable. Really, it's it's a part of it when you dig beneath the surface, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So with these sort of unprecedented times, with the Pentagon, openly admitting that UFOs are real, and the growing mainstream awareness, particularly in the States, obviously, slowly catching up here in the UK, and the new UAP office in the works, and the Galileo project, putting together a really strong team to scientifically look into this. Where do you both feel the UFO topic is going as we go along? And you guys can choose who wants to go first on that one.
You go first, Ash. You're the expert.
That's the expert.
Out of the two of us, you definitely are.
So obviously, I follow quite closely all the happenings in America, and I think I don't know, it's hard. I think it's just hard to know what to trust and who to trust, because even if they got this new office, and even if they did do these yearly reports of what's being reported, you still don't know what's true, what's not, what isn't being told, what is being told, what's some parts of some stories are going to be told, other parts aren't going to be told. And there's they lied to us for 70 years. So why now do we think that they're going to tell us the truth? It's just going to be is it just another distraction? Oh, it's getting a lot of pressure on us at the minute. Let's do something just to appease them for a bit, but not actually tell them anything that's important. So I think time will tell. It could be years. I think when we look back in 20 years, maybe we look back and think, actually, yeah, these few years were the big turning point. But I don't think we'll know that until years down the line. We've actually been able to get some reports, get some information, and see what they're actually telling us, if anything.
I think the same. I take my lead from Ash, really, but from a normal person. So I'm not the UFO expert. I think it's been really exciting the last couple of years. I listen to, say, Joe Rogan's podcast. I know that's quite a touchy subject at the moment, but when he's got the likes of Commander Favour on his podcast talking about the Tic Tac and the US Nimitz and the events that happened 15, 16 years ago, and then you've got the videos that come out a few years ago, I think all of that seems to show that it's now being accepted that, like you say, the government are saying that UFOs are real. You've got these mainstream, I say mainstream, but like high profile influencers like Joe Rogan having guests on openly talking about UFO experiences they're having. He's got Travis Walton's been on there, and it's all to the forefront of people who've never experienced UFO subject before. And I think it seems to have ramped up. You see it in the press regularly, that these UFOs are over wherever and mysterious objects spotted. The internet is awash with UFO sightings. And for somebody like a normal person like myself, that's definitely been an upward trajectory over the last couple of years. So I think it's great. But I think what Ash is saying is or from what Ash says, it is going to be a little while before we get anything, if anything at all, because are they actually telling us the truth? So
Yeah,
you don't know. They never told us the truth before, so why would they start telling us the truth now? There's usually a reason why they give the information out, and it's either, like Ash said, just to give us a little tidbit now, just to keep the wolves away from the door. But it might all be lies anyway.
Yeah, it's the possibility of disinfo as well, isn't it? Because you've got to think that there's, sort of amongst the people who are the closest to really understanding what's going on. Because again, it's that thing you talk about, the American government, because that's kind of the place where all the main events have been happening over the last few years. The government's absolutely huge. It's a massive organisation. But if we're just talking about the actual people who are closest to the reality, like they actually are the closest to knowing what's actually going on and the extent of what is held in terms of materials and data and so on, some of those people are going to be interested in keeping this secret for whatever reasons, as it has been for the last however many decades. And some of those people perhaps now are starting to think more along the lines of more transparency, and that kind of thing. And the people who are trying to keep those secrets, you've got to think there's going to be some kind of disinformation efforts, and certain, things, if you put them out into the public eye, could actually increase the stigma again, all over again. What do you guys think about that? The possibility of disinfo. Do you think there's any specific aspects of the conversation around UFOs that is disinfo, for example?
I think, again, it's hard to tell at the minute, but I think looking back in the future, we'll be able to see, like, sort of pinpoint what was coming out and when and what that might have been, if that's disinformation. And I think with disinformation, as well as what is being reported, is, as well as with investigations, you've got to approach it with a skeptical mind. And I think that applies to just looking at the news, looking at what is being officially released. There's a lot of people just jumped into it, I just got really excited. This is happening, this is happening, this is happening. Whereas you got to stand back and just, again, approach like an investigation, apply the skeptical mind first. What is it? What isn't it? And then I think you got to do that to find out what the actual answer could be. But again, I don't think we're going to know for some time. And I think we're in the midst of it. And I think these few years will be the pivotal turning point of modern ufology. And we're experiencing now, so it is exciting. But it's also, you got to sort of take that step back, like I say, and just think, okay, let's just weigh it up. Is what's being said true? Who's saying it and why? And just approach it that way. But like I say, we're not going to find out, I think, for maybe a decade or more.
I personally think there's a bit of a danger with, I think UFO Twitter overall is great. It's been a great way for me to connect with people and whatnot, especially since starting the podcast. But, sometimes there can be almost like an addiction to new stuff. You know what I mean? To the point where it's like really exciting things are happening and another really exciting thing happens and then somebody comes out from behind the scenes and then that kind of creates like an appetite. People want the next thing. And in some cases that can mean that you're too eager. I mean, not you guys, obviously, but just people in general can be a bit too eager to kind of grab the next thing in, and that's fertile ground for disinformation, isn't it? Because all you got to do is think of a well-constructed backstory, put somebody out there and lead everybody down this direction with a carrot whilst the real information's going the other way.
Yeah, you see it time and time again, where there'd be a new Twitter account or a new Reddit account and it'd be a story or a bit of trailer for something that's going to be coming, and then everyone sort of jumps in it like, oh, something's happening, this guy's got this story. But you do a little bit of search into it, you think, actually, no, this guy's full of shit. But then it's got 10,000 retweets or upvotes, and then that gets it popular. But then 2 months later, nothing's happened. That guy disappeared off Twitter or disappeared off Reddit, and the story's just dead. But you just see it time and time again, the same thing happening. Like, say, people are eager. People want to see something. Because it has been fairly quiet, I guess, in terms of new videos, new information. Like when Corbell releases a new video, or when the like the gimbal tic tac videos were released. We got quite a lot in a short space of time. Then we had the task force report last year, the setting up of the new office. But apart from the actual bit of legislation, there's not really been anything come out that's new for a while. So I think so when something does come along where someone's saying, "Oh, I've got this video," or "I'm an ex investigator for OSAP and I've got this fantastic story," people want to believe it because they want something, the next big thing, and they just believe it too easily, and that then gives it momentum. So then more people start believing it, even though it's bullshit.
Yeah, that's the danger, isn't it? But you know, like you said, I think the important thing is to have like a proper, you know, analysis like process rather than just being excited by the shiny new thing or whatever, isn't it? And you know, I think segues quite nicely actually onto what I was going to talk about next, which is the UFO identified UFO report for 2021, where you guys have actually put together like sort of a compilation of all different cases, and you've included like graphs and you know maps as to where all the hotspots are and things like that, and that kind of thing is what it's all about. I think, you know, putting it all together as data that can be properly read through and people can make their own judgments and that kind of thing. So how did that come about? How can people find it? And were there any particular cases or statistics that you found particularly interesting?
Yeah, so the main reason I started doing this, and UFO Identify sort of as a whole, because I started getting back into the subject about 4 or 5 years ago, seriously. I became an investigator for BUFORA, the British UFO Research Association. So I did that for a couple of years, and then when lockdown first started with COVID, I was furloughed from the casino job. We were like the first places to close. And so I had all this time on my hands. So I thought, right, I'm going to do some serious study now into like what's happening in the UK. I couldn't find much. It was all like American stuff, or it was all from UK stuff, but from the 90s and the 80s. I was struggling to find anything that was happening today. That's when I thought, right, I'm going to try and fill this gap of what's happening today, what's being seen, what's being reported, the cases that are happening today, not what happened 20 years ago, which is still important, but I was interested in current day news. So I started, just for my own reasons, just collecting all the sightings from all different databases. So I'm UFON, National UFO Reporting Centre, Truth Proof, reports that come to us, all different places. I was just collecting them from my own sort of information. I wasn't publishing them anywhere. Just in my head, I was just doing my own sort of research. So I was doing that for a few months, and then I thought, the people always ask me about any sightings here, any sightings there. So I thought, how can I get this online? So I created the website, and there's the sightings database on there. So we collect all the reports from all different places and put them into one database, so you can see at a glance what's being reported, and then you can search by region and all this as well, and like by shape, by colour, all these different things. And last year there was over 400 sightings that we managed to collect. That's just publicly available on the internet, but it's all in one place. Then monthly we do sort of a quick snapshot of what we've seen last month in like the most popular area. And then, like I said, I mentioned the UK UFO Report 2021 is a look back at the whole of the year. So we see which area of the UK had the most sightings, what was being reported the most, when and where. And like I say, over 400 sightings. There's one really interesting day, which is actually in January 2021. So in the month of January, there's 5 reports that involved a triangle. Going back to triangles again. So there's 5 reports that involved a triangle shape being reported. 4 of them were within one 16-hour period. So that just stuck out to me straight away. It was like in 16 hours, there's 4 different actual reported sightings of the Black Triangle. And they were all down the west corridor of England. So it was like from Manchester, it's actually Stockport, I think it was. And then like Midlands, and then sort of Somerset, Bristol way, and then one in South Wales. But all seemed to be along this little corridor. You know, like within the 16-hour period, there was these 4 sightings. So that sort of stuck out as I wasn't able to get too much more information on them because it's just reports made to other sort of databases. So I couldn't really dig deep into actually investigating them sightings. But it just stuck out definitely that these 4 sightings occurred in the same day, pretty much, all in like it looked like it had gone down the edge of the country. This triangle. You thought they could have all been not related, but they could have been. And then on the 22nd of April, I did an investigation. There was 8 sightings on that day, but 4 were very, very similar. They were all different parts of the country, and there's pictures of each of them. So you have 4 pictures, all very, very similar pictures of what appears to be this white object. First glance, it looks like a balloon. And when I first saw the pictures, I was like, yeah, that's a mylar balloon. It gets reported quite often as a UFO, but I was like, yeah, that's a mylar balloon. But digging into it, I don't think it was. From the reports made by the people reporting it, the descriptions of the movements and how it appeared didn't match that of a mylar balloon. And my report is about 8 or 9 pages. Involved FOI requests to the Ministry of Defence and to the Civil Aviation Authority, because there was also in the region of one sighting, there was what the AWACS plane, the radar plane that you see, was basically moving around this one area where one of the sightings was, like less than 20 minutes later after this reported sighting. And when you look at the flight path, it's a very erratic flight path. It had gone up to Scotland originally and then come back down and then started this really erratic movement in the area where this sighting was. So we requested the flight details from the MOD, and they confirmed, yeah, it on a pre-planned routine flight. So I asked again, response back to him and said, well, so the flight was pre-planned, fair enough, but was the end of the flight where it started doing these erratic movements, was that part of it, or was that in response to something that had been reported or seen? And I basically said that the flight data had been deleted, and they couldn't tell me if that was the intended route or not, and this was less than a month after the sighting. So they were like, no, the flight data's been deleted. So obviously I fought back after that, but not really able to get anything from it. But if you look at the report, I put the flight path on the report, an image of it, and you can see like that's not a flight path that you'd usually take. It just doesn't make sense. It's just to be so close in the same area after a sighting, like 20 minutes after one of these objects was seen, it just adds a bit of, it could have been something that was seen.
Yeah, and for anybody who's interested in checking out the report, that's on the website, isn't it? UFOidentified.co.uk, is that the one?
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Spot on. And I definitely recommend people go check that out. It's I was having a read through early today, really interesting. And like I say, I particularly like the graphs and the maps and stuff with the hot spots of where the sightings have been.
Yeah,
really.
The reason why I do that as well is I like to deal in facts, and obviously in this subject, there's very little actual truth that you can say for sure that this happened. It's a lot of this could happen. It's witness testimony. It's good to hear, but there's not much hard evidence. With these sightings, no matter what these sightings are, because obviously 95% of sightings end up being explained. But regardless of what these sightings are, the fact is that from the data that I've got, there were 430 UFO sightings reported last year. That's fact. It doesn't matter what each of those sightings were. The fact that there were 430 reported sightings, that's hard data. Again, like I say, I've broken it down into where the hotspots were, when things are being seen, what was being seen, and that's all data. That's all true. To put it in a way that is what was reported, and that it isn't someone just saying it. It's not me just saying it. That they were reported last year.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I'm the same. It's like I try to be as open-minded as possible with all the various different aspects of this, but really, at the end of the day, that kind of hard, data and things that you can actually, tangible information that you can really get stuck into is very important, I think, if you actually want to get to the bottom of it, which is why I'm really excited about, the Galileo project and all that side of things. So what have you guys got planned for the coming year then on the podcast? And Greg, have you got any paranormal investigations upcoming?
Paranormal investigations. I think we're going to try and get back to the Ancient Ramen.
And I'm coming this time.
Yeah, so me and Ash actually want to go and do a podcast from there, which would be amazing, especially if there's just a few of us there. That'd be quite incredible, and hopefully we can sort that out. We've got loads of guests coming up. We're actually starting to get ahead of ourselves quite a bit, which is good. We've had some really good ones on, and we've got some good ones coming up as well. And we've got the UFO side, but also like the poltergeist seems to be a subject that people like listening to. So we've got some poltergeist stuff coming up soon as well.
Should be a good year, eh? Exciting times ahead.
Yeah, we try and cover off loads of different subjects and not concentrate. So each of the episodes, we don't try and clump too many of the same ones together. So we try and have a mix of all the different types of paranormal stuff. So we're just getting people messaging us now saying, "Can we come on your show?" So that's really encouraging. So yeah, it's exciting times for us. We're on the up, I think. So
yeah, as I say, I think you guys are a bit ahead of your time, really, eh? Paranormal and UFOs together before Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, I guess.
Yeah, there we go.
What about you, Ash? Have you got anything exciting in the pipeline?
Yes, definitely. So, podcast side of it, like I say, we've always done at least one episode a week. We now, since last year, have done at least 2 episodes every week, which is hard work, but we do manage it, and we are going to increase that a little bit more. Greg's like, "Oh no," but we're going to just keep getting episodes. UFO identifier side of things. So we have lots of stuff in the pipeline. There's 2 things that are almost finalised that I just want to just get out and say, yes, we're doing this, but I can't say it until we actually got everything finalised. But there's some very exciting stuff coming up. Some of it's pretty unique as well, I think. So I'm excited to be able to tell people about that. So that's 2 events. We've got one in March coming up. Should be announced very soon. We've got one in the summer, and we've got our mini con. It's going to be at the end of the year, in the autumn again, like it was last year. Which was, like I say, you've talked about it a few times on your podcast, which I just thank you for, because I just love. I'm just listening to an episode, the next minute I hear the mini con pop up in an episode. I'm like, oh, he's talking about the mini con again. But yeah, that was an amazing day, and I just thank everyone that came and supported us. It was just awesome. I say we sold out that mini con. Our very first time doing anything like that at all. We planned it in like 2 months. It's supposed to be something small for our members, and it just catapulted into this biggest conference in the UK last year, with some awesome speakers. So yeah, so we'll be doing that again in the autumn, which again, everything's in the sort of planning stage. We're so close to finalising the next couple of events, so we can then announce them. So keep an eye on our social media, and we'll be posting them soon.
Yeah, definitely check that out, guys. So that's pretty much all we've got time for. So do you guys want to just let the listeners know where they can find you on the social media and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we're on Facebook, facebook.com/Pursuit of the Paranormal Podcast. We're on Instagram at Pursuit of the Paranormal. We've got a website, pursuitoftheparanormal.co.uk. We're both on Twitter. We've even got a TikTok now, which, yeah, we're proper cool with the kids now. Facebook is sort of the main bit people contact us through. We're on Spotify. We're on Google Podcasts. We're on Apple. We're everywhere that you can get your podcast. I'm sure we're there. So yeah, if you search Pursuit of the Paranormal, that will pretty much get you to us. And then obviously, Ash, you got your UFO stuff.
Yeah, that's just UFOidentified.co.uk, and on Facebook, our group is UFO Identified page and UFO Identified Northwest Division. That's where the main community group is, where we do sky watching and stuff. That's like a local group to us. So yeah, search was on there.
Brilliant. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you both very much.
Cheers, Frank.
UFO Thinker Podcast.